spring break is sneaking up on everybody. This is a time of the year where families and college students take a trip to a warmer city, hopefully, where beaches and ocean waves can be found. For those old enough to drink and party, it can get a little crazy. So we have etiquette expert Akila Easter. She's here with tips on how to stay safe while on vacation. Akila, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So what are you going to do for spring break? First, we are going to talk about some sensitive topics, right?
Yeah, so we've got some sensitive topics we're going to be talking about here that involve sex and other adult content. So if you have those little ones in the room, you should probably go ahead and remove them. Akila, thanks for letting everybody know that. I've got a 10-year-old son, so mine will not necessarily have to do with some of the topics here.
Not yet.
We'll be more low-key in Hilton Head, hanging out down there, doing the beach and looking for seashells, not looking for trouble, which some kids at that age tend to do. So
that's the time when you're like, I can get away from my parents, I can do what I want to do. And I want to talk about like what's going on right now with consent, with the Me Too movement. So understanding if you are going to be away from your parents, having that level of responsibility, if you are going to be intimate with somebody, to make sure that you know what consent is, you know what a yes, what a no means, when you are intoxicated, how to protect yourself. So I always tell people to make sure you tell your kids to have a buddy system. Always have a buddy system to, one, you're having somebody responsible for somebody else, and another thing, somebody always knows where you are when you're not home with your parents.
Okay, so let's start with those young men that are going to be out there partying, you know, and these are any ages really from, unfortunately, it goes probably to like 12 years old on up to
that's true. That's true.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the age we're at
Adults
now.
too, Jordan. I'm talking because, you know, I couldn't wait. Sometimes, like, even our 30s, we're like, I'm just going to go away and just be somebody else, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So just making sure with the young men, it's unfortunately, they have more responsibility because they may be more dominant in the situation. So making sure they hear a yes. If you can be intimate with somebody, you can have a blunt conversation with them. So making sure you hear yes. If they are intoxicated, I would consider that a no.
No matter what. I mean, once alcohol is involved, that can really make for murky waters.
Right, because when somebody wakes up and they don't know what happens, you don't know what their emotional response is going to be. So you don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, and in those moments, typically the man is fallible because they're in somewhat of control of the situation, being that they're the more dominant force of the two.
Right, and unfortunately that's our societal aspect, but hopefully we're working on that. But yeah, he should make sure that he is completely aware and make sure he's protected as well. You don't want to come home with a couple of little critters.
Yeah, you don't want those things coming back with you because they do travel. Well, how about the female aspect before we get to the safe sex side of it?
Women need to know that they need to make sure that they let somebody know where they are. I always have a little tip of everybody who's going together, put a tracker of each other on your cell phone so everybody knows where everybody is.
Now, when you say, is there software that you can use?
Yeah, there's several different apps that you can just say, hey, I'm going to track my friend's phone just for the vacation. I don't want to track you when we get back home, but I'm not going to be a stalker. But I want to make sure that I know where everybody is. And if you haven't heard from somebody in a while, you want to make sure you're sending a text. And girls should have a code word. And guys can do that too. I always, my girlfriends, even before all the technology, we had code words like, hey, buckwheat, like, get me out of this situation, right?
But should they always also have something, like, I know a woman can handle themselves in most situations, but doesn't it make sense to have, you know, a buddy with you, you know, travel in a pack to keep yourself safe? Because these are uncharted territories and it's spring break and it can get wild and you don't want to find yourself there alone, right?
And I always suggest that. You always have a buddy, but you know, sometimes there may be circumstances when you do want to go alone off with some gentleman or somebody else, and you want to make sure that everybody knows where you are and that you are protecting yourself. And you make sure you say yes or no. And one of the situations that can be murky is, you're in an uncomfortable situation, you may have gone too far, you can say no at any point.
Absolutely, and a man should respect that no. All right, so sometimes on spring break, consensual activity does happen, and when you find yourself in that position where consent is on both sides, you then engage in the act of potentially having sex. What are some of the advice or tools or tips you have in that regard?
Everybody should carry condoms, okay? Boys and girls. And I think parents should have a blunt conversation. Let's not be in denial about what goes on during spring break. And parents should be able to have a blunt conversation with their kids. Look, here's some condoms. I'm not promoting that you use them, but if you are in a situation, you have that protection.
I love it. Well, that's Akila Easter. You always got some knowledge to drop, and very timely right now with everybody getting ready for their spring break trips. Hopefully that helps you guys out. I'm sure it does. Akila, thanks for sharing these tips. We want to make sure everyone returns home safely. Don't go anywhere. More of The Jam coming right back. And make sure you check out Akila CT. Design yourself, AkilaCT.com.